Are you an early stage founder revolutionizing the future of retail? Then you're in the right place. My name is Shah, and I'm an angel investor investing at the pre-seed and seed stage in retail tech, e-commerce, marketplaces, and consumer. I'm also the founder of Retail X Series, an ecosystem to help early stage founders in the retail and consumer sectors. Retail X Series includes events, a YouTube channel, a Slack community, resources for founders, and this podcast. In this podcast, I interview founders, investors, and experts in the retail space, and we dig deep into the tactics around key topics that early stage founders want to hear about. Welcome to the Retail X podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Retail X Series podcast. I'm your host, Sapna Shah. Today's episode features Casey Golden, CEO of Luxlock, an omni-retail customer experience management platform. Casey will share her sales journey from the first customer to today. Welcome to the podcast, Casey.
Thank you. I'm so excited. You've been a part of my journey since Luxlock was just a PowerPoint. So I'm a strong supporter of Retail X and just want to say thank you for creating a community for retail tech founders, even if it's just to commiserate.
You were so sweet. I know. I feel like I've known you forever, which I maybe getting ahead of ourselves, but maybe that means that retail tech takes a long time to build. So let's kick off with some background. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what Luxlock does.
Yeah, so I have sold about $30 million in retail enterprise software and probably over 500 million in apparel. So I come from both sides of the industry. It's definitely not my first retail tech startup. I think this will be at some point my 15-year overnight success story. Completely obsessed with solving this problem. So I really had a very unique perspective or experience coming into being a tech founder. My sales performance in the fashion industry allowed me to work in design stages, be able to be in merchandise planning, assortment planning, leading the first e-commerce builds, really because when you're top sales, your opinion matters. To people who are making your product and the way that it's being presented. So the experience that I didn't have directly from the brand side, I picked up when I moved to the vendor side. So I started selling supply chain management technology on the PLMs, the ERPs, warehouse management, shop floor control, and it just all came together. And I saw a huge white space in the area where I just didn't feel confident in my career on the brand side or on the enterprise retail tech side, because it was just so wholesale focused. And I'm obsessed with the relationship between the brand and the consumer. I'm like, need to move. And there was nowhere to move to. So I'm like, we're going to go ahead and build it. And that kind of goes into Luxlock. It's an experience management platform for premium luxury brands to scale their B2C business. So unifying that customer experience from 16 e-commerce stores, 2,800 physical stores, 18 restaurants, a fleet of hotels, a chocolatier, a florist. A lot of people forget that luxury retail is not just about clothing.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So this is all about that B2B sales piece and how you've gone from those early stages. So let's start talking about sales strategy right from the very beginning. So at the earliest stages of your startup, before you even had a single customer, how did you think about targeting customers for Luxlock?
So I was already addicted to my industry and in love with it. So I had been developing my network, but I may not have been nurturing it. And so my first step was to get in front of friends and friends that would believe in me. But when I thought of that, I wasn't thinking of who says happy birthday, who likes my stuff on Instagram. It was really who would hire me, who's watched me perform and outperform, and who have I contributed in their success in some way that I can get like a favor.
Right.
And so you can't really download your LinkedIn contacts anymore. So I did sit there and I printed off like 600 pages of paper of my contacts, and I grabbed a handful of highlighters and really just started going through page by page, with pink being all of my besties, green being former coworkers, former strategic partners, retail consultants I've worked with, blue was brand founders, Yellow was industry, network, and thought leadership, where they had opinions, but I couldn't sell them the software. And then purple, I went on to, which is, I really need to focus on nurturing those relationships, whether or not they're with brands or just people who I knew were innovators in general on the brand side. It was an interesting, like 45 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a really interesting process, actually, because I think one of the things that many founders don't do is realize how many people are in their networks, but then how to classify them. And you had a very, I guess, systematic approach to your network, which I think is so interesting. So you did this, you went through all of this highlighter. I can't even imagine what 600 pages of this look like, but
You can grab it.
This is a podcast, Casey. Nobody can see it. Okay, so let's move on. So then you've done all this, and now you have to decide, okay, what kind of customer are you going to target? Like, you're looking at luxury. Luxury includes brands like Chanel and includes brands you've never heard of. Where did you start?
Well, I wanted to start with Chanel, just like everyone else in this industry, but that's not something that's likely to happen. But they lead, they don't follow. So they were one of the first companies I got in front of to show them my PowerPoint.
Interesting.
To get their feedback, because at the end of the day, it's Chanel. And so I wanted to be able to start at the top, get their feedback. They're doing what, 10 billion a year in sales without ecom. How do you guys feel about ecom? And so Luxlock was literally designed for enterprise retail brands. Average size is what, $1 billion in revenue a year. They're not necessarily small brands, but I knew I couldn't come out of the gates selling enterprise. And so I didn't want to change the product that I was building to support a different business. So I just had to make something work to be able to get enough proof of concept out. And what I did is really went with small brands that had a strong e-commerce platform, low traffic to mid traffic, that couldn't really afford their Instagram ads or their Facebook ads, to say, hey, can I come in here and work on a project just for retention and conversion optimization? Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not going to take any of your money away from it, but can I go ahead and try and convert more traffic that hits your site? Nobody said no.
Really? That's great.
So everybody was just, yeah, please help. And so that was really beneficial. But then it came down to supporting a business you didn't necessarily build the software. And so we just really worked on what we could control. I can't control your traffic right now because we're both startups, but I can control the stickiness and the customer experience. And so we really just focused the product on who that ideal end shopper is and how do we make them super happy.
Got it. And so then you did something really interesting, is that you volunteered at a brand. So tell me what that was all about.
So I sold an ERP system to a company. So I knew their tech stack, like their whole tech stack. I knew all of their business processes from doing a BPR and an RFP with them. And you get to know everyone there, right? So I asked them, told them what I was building, showed them my PowerPoint, and I said, can I volunteer here on a regular basis and just be the person on the other side of your live chat on your e-commerce store? And I make sure what I'm building matters and understand how we can get the job done using the software that's available. And there was like a smirk, and you want to come work for free? Yeah. And sure, we'll get you a desk. And so I went in every Monday at 9 a.m. with the whole team. And I sat next to like the social media manager and the head of PR and customer experience. And I got to literally do all of the live chat on the brand's e-commerce store and have 22 tabs open and calling Nordstrom to try and get like something on hold for this customer online, and just really go through, this is not built for shopping. This is built for a call center.
Right.
And so they worked with me and really helped me suss out like, what is our MVP? Because it can't be my dream and it can't be my vision. And I can't put a 3-month product on a big brand. It's going to have to be, we're going to have to build it completely. it's going to be a full build for one feature out of the platform. So I'm so grateful to them.
This is so scrappy and so interesting. I love this story, right? This is exactly like the kind of thing when we talk about retail tech in particular. If you haven't worked in the industry, if you haven't seen it on the other side, it's really hard to build for it because it's such a unique industry with its own problems, right? That you really have to be deep in it to figure this out. And even though you had worked in the industry for so long, this was still a valuable experience to you, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on the floor as like $1 million seller. I started clientele. I never really did it with e-commerce.
Right.
I went to being a blogger, and in the early days of '05 and '07, I was like a fashion blogger selling online. So I had this vision. I knew how it was done properly, but I really needed practical experience of what does it really take to get the job done doing this, and what do we need?
Got it. Okay, so let's move on to now post PowerPoint. Your first customer. Let's talk about your first customer. How did you find them? How did that go?
So I was very lucky. I worked at Ralph Lauren and I launched wholesale for children's wear. So, and when I say I launched wholesale, I don't mean like I launched the wholesale program, but they had never gone to market before.
Mhm.
So, like trade shows. So, I've had this amazing network of brands because I entered the first time and I had lines of hundreds of buyers that were actually sitting down and writing orders. And everybody's coming up like, how are you doing this? And I made a lot of friends, and one specifically just ended up being one of somebody who I just really admired their work. And I'm like, can I help in any way to support you? Would you be my first customer? Because I love your product and I can sell the crap out of it.
Mhm.
Because my first customer, I was going to be the salesperson on the other side. So I needed a product that like knew I could just sell. And so she let me go ahead and integrate. She didn't know what an API was. She's, what do you need? I'm like, I just need admin access. Can I have admin access to your e-com store? And we did the integration, we did some testing, but at the end of the day, her brand was too big for me to start with. So she didn't have enough staff, and I was trying to run a company and build a company at that point. And so I went with another founder friend that literally had no traffic on her site, but had good SKU count. And I implemented with her, and then I drove all the traffic to the site. So I started driving the traffic to the site to get all the testing. And then I knew the customers were coming in specifically to click my button and go through the shopping experience. But we were in beta for probably almost 18 months, making edits and iterations with these very small startup brands to really understand like, what does the salesperson need? What's sticky for the customer? And through that process, we ended up patenting our technology to really get a product that was super, super sticky that hopefully would give us a little bit of leeway to protect ourselves to at least get somewhere.
For sure. Okay, so you had this customer, you're in beta, you're driving traffic to the site, you're testing this out, you're iterating your product. Now let's talk about where you go from there. How did you get those next early customer relationships as you're continuing to like come out of beta and really develop the product fully?
I was talking to everyone, anybody that would talk to me, anyone that would listen to my vision of the future. I was working on all of those, nurture the relationships, started with some additional thought leadership, just sharing my perspective because it was very much in contrast to common beliefs. And I was able to essentially go head to head with some other startups that were more established than me. And I was able to win a deal. And I did that really because I understood their business and they essentially picked me over them. It did really come down to founder fit was their reasoning is they felt stronger that I'm going to build something more aligned to them since they're choosing between two startups.
Yeah.
And being able to just nobody wants to be first in this space. They
Yeah.
all want they want to lead the narrative. They just don't want to be first. And getting that key account is is incredibly hard. And so what we did is we launched in February of 2020 out of beta.
I wonder what happened the next month after that.
All of our enterprise accounts, like everybody was furloughing staff faster than I could call and say, no, don't, please wait. We can move them online. So it may have been like a strike of lightning as a benefit to me, but it really didn't help our revenue that was projected for that next 30 days. And what we decided to do is, I know nobody wants to work with a startup. There's a graveyard behind us in retail tech of very talented founders and amazing software solutions. We decided to make ourselves look big. And I never spoke about us being a startup. We've been in business since we were incorporated. And I just says we're not a startup. I can go head to head with anybody else that you might be looking at, regardless of how much money they raised. We'll beat you and we'll get you on features. And so that's the stance we took on it to try and neutralize that situation.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I don't think I hear of founders doing that, but it's a really interesting strategy. But it's hard to do also when you're early, right? Because you don't typically, in retail tech in particular, you don't actually know who is the person at each brand or retailer that you're going to have to target, right? And I've heard this from so many founders is we first thought we were going after this person who's in charge of innovation and digital strategy, but it actually turned out to be like the buyer or in marketing or somebody else. So how did you navigate that as you're trying to look big, as you're not a big company, but you clearly have such an in-depth knowledge of the industry? So how did you navigate that? Who did you figure out who you needed to get in front of?
So for me, e-commerce was relatively new to like luxury. It'd been outsourced for years. And so there wasn't a lot of people that worked in that. There weren't really divisions. And anybody that was starting to be an e-commerce manager, digital transformation, they were brand new. And I didn't know them. They're younger than I was. And so I've hit a wall that I might know 18 people at the brand. I don't know anybody in the digital team.
Right.
Like they were still in college or high school when I was already working. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to go direct. So I started with my network, and I essentially started with a lot more C-suite and SVPs. And who would I talk to at the organization to do this? And this was actually something that I did a lot of the times when I was looking for jobs, is I'd always apply to the hiring boss, because it goes down and everybody reads their boss's email.
So true.
So I'm like, let me go and have them help me navigate who's the right person. I don't know if it's the right fit or not. I don't know if it's an initiative that you're looking to do, but you're my ideal customer that I would like to use my software. And can you help me? Can you guide me through the organization to get a hold of the right person to see if this is interesting? And most people were very open to saying, I have no idea who you would talk to, but let me go find out, because this is cool. And so pitching at the top and then coming down, those decisions do end up circling back up the funnel once over a couple months. It's working, and it's been working, which is nice. But now I literally, over the last like probably year and a half, really trying to focus on getting to know all the digital teams.
Yeah. So once you knew that the digital team and whoever in that digital team is the right person, you can now, I guess I'm putting words in your mouth, you can now target at any brand or retailer. Is that fair?
Yeah, you can target at any of them, but like everybody's job titles mean different things. And I found that to be really difficult, especially when you're looking at the premium market. A lot of contemporary brands will be based out of New York or LA, but a lot of them are in luxury, or even some of the premium brands, they're based out of Europe.
Yeah.
And you got HQ decision makers, and you've got US decision makers, and you've got a president on both sides. And they both have different relationships. They're both talking to different vendors, and they may not be talking to each other.
Yeah.
And so it is a complicated sales cycle, but it can definitely be navigated. The nice thing about this space is it's really hard to get those first accounts and the first key account, but it does waterfall. Once one brand's using it, you can get 5 more. Once 5 are using it, you can get 25 more. And it's just happens a lot faster until it just waterfalls, because they all share the same end consumer. So if you're helping them in that type of experience or whatnot, they have a lot of the same values, even just in the way their philosophy when it comes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then know that this is like a kind of a topic. I've done a whole podcast on cold emails and warm intros. You have some strong and I think maybe unusual opinions on warm intros. So tell me why you don't think a warm intro is the way to go when you're looking to sell your product into a brand.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of success with warm intros because there's not enough conviction, or there's not a strong enough relationship to where it's just like I'm asking somebody that I don't know really well, or asking somebody to introduce me to somebody that they may or may not know very well. And I'm asking them to do work. And so I took it as I'm either, if I can text somebody for an intro that they literally can text themselves and put me in a group chat with, or I know that they are friends with this person, or they've made money together, or they've worked together, where their opinion carries weight, I'll go for a hot intro, like really warm, like we're going to dinner and meeting there, going to a concert together. I really go for the hot, or I'll go for the cold. So every ERP system I ever sold was a cold email.
Oh, interesting.
It was a cold call, actually. It was a cold call. But either the intros, the warm intros, the email drip campaigns, all of that, none of it really worked in this space because they're overworked and they're underpaid. It's a fire drill every day in their house. And so I just didn't want to ask somebody to do work unless they were really excited to do it. I'd rather just go in cold. And then if I can get somewhere, then I'll kind of reach out for an assist.
Makes sense. Okay, I want to move on from this topic and I want to talk about pilots and contracts and how you have navigated this. We hear the conventional wisdom is never do a free pilot, always do a paid pilot. Some founders say, nope, we're not even doing pilots, we're going straight into contract. Some find that they do pilots that are paid that never convert. What's been your experience and sort of how has that worked for you?
This is a disaster of trying to figure out how to figure out pilot programs, because venture-backed companies give everything away for free, and retail tech is a traditionally underfunded area. We have to charge something, and so it's really hard to get those pilots out, but also make your life easier. We use the same exact pilot agreement for every single brand, no changes. This is our pilot program, or you pay full price. And what we did was we had a female founder pilot program, and we partnered with 25 female founders that had fancy consumer brands. And we came in with a bring your own price. And it was something you can pay every month, something that's not going to kill your burn, but something I don't have to chase you for. You're raising, I'm raising. We both need to show numbers. So let's work together and let's get some numbers together. And we used an ROI calculator essentially that said, if our software makes you X, you'll pay Y. Once our software makes you this, then you'll pay that. And we put it in 4 tranches to full price. So the first one, maybe it was, you could pay $250 a month, but as soon as we made you, I think it was like $6,000 in revenue, you're going to pay $1,000 a month. And essentially did it in a tiered system to bring you full price. And we put everybody's contracts on annual automatic recurring billing at full price, and then doing a discount. And then just over time, we're removing the discount while they're making more money. Because
Right.
I feel the hardest thing, and I can say, I don't think everybody loves my financials, but no, it's impossible to get somebody to pay more for something after they've already been paying less for it.
Totally agree. It's incredibly challenging.
So we went a different direction. And as much as I felt that it was very well thought out, it was very strategic, I felt that it was very sound. At the end of the day, startups almost killed us. And so we were still chasing for money. And I felt terrible chasing founders down for $650 a month or
Yeah.
$1,800 a month. I felt horrible as a founder. I know how hard it is. And it was very time consuming. So the amount of resources, they always say your cheapest customer is your most expensive. And so we got to a point where we just made a big transition and said, we're enterprise only.
Yeah.
You guys are fine, but there's no more services. I've got to cut off.
What about, particularly with enterprise customers who are many times incredibly difficult to deal with, what about customization of product? This is something I think every enterprise customer wants something that's very specific to them.
I know they think that they're all making something that nobody else is making in their own magical way. But so we're no customizations. It's my way or the highway, period. Like this is very specific on being able to increase conversion rates and the user experience. Every single one of these brands, essentially anti-Amazon brands, we just looked at as you guys all share a market, you share a target market, you share a value system, a sales methodology. This is not the point to create differentiation and customizations for the user experience because you guys all share the same user. Let's not make it difficult for the consumer. Let's go ahead and we'll add things onto the roadmap for the salespeople, the reporting, the analytics, appointment setting, different new features that make sense for everyone because there is a level of standards that everybody needs. So we created a spreadsheet that essentially allowed everyone to put their requests on there. And we would go ahead and go out to our customers, even our startups, and say, these are what we're looking at for the roadmap for this quarter, or this actually, and we're running 2-week sprints like crazy. So this is what we're building this month. Which one's the highest priority?
Right.
And so we went with it like, we're going to build this. We'll make sure you guys are all accounted for. But it's one of my biggest pet peeves is that retail technology, especially enterprise, is mainly a professional services company. And that's really where they make that's what brands are used to. There's not a lot of plug and play platforms out there for retail. Everything is professional services, and that's how they make money. And so I didn't want to be a professional services company. We really wanted to be a software company and make it very configurable. Let's do some radio buttons. Everybody's making cookies. Do you want 100% shortening? Do you want half butter? Do you want walnuts? Do you want chocolate chips? These are all of our core options, and they should just be configurable radio buttons. Do you do this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And I feel like it's strong enough to go into for a 3-month go live. Let's go. Let's get live. And then we take a revenue share. If our software is working and making you money, we're making money. If my software is not making money, then I'm going to build something that's going to fix the problem. So I make money and you make money. And so I just felt like by taking that revenue share, I'm going to build what's important to you and to me. And you're not going to be upset that I've been there in your office for 2 years and build you like $500,000 for stuff that like you're not even using.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned revenue share because I think that I know founders who have had success with that and founders that do not have success with that and have had to switch to like more of a SaaS model or something like that or a license fee. How has that sort of pricing journey worked for you and how did you land on revenue share that kind of clearly seems to be working?
Yeah. So our pricing is it's very funny. We charge $4,000 a month per location as a SaaS fee. And then we charge 5% net assisted sales. So sales minus returns. For $1 million seller to stand in a store, they cost a $4,000 a month draw, and they earn 7 to 10% commission. Since we had to build software that could track that for their salespeople, I just went ahead and considered Luxlock as one salesperson that's going to turn your whole team into $1 million sellers. And if they're making 7% or 10%, literally we're like the sales assistant, and I'm going to take a 5% cut, and I'm not going to charge you data usage by millisecond. I'm not going to charge you. Otherwise, I'm going to have, in order for me to make money, I'm going to have to charge you $250,000 implementation fee. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to create an a la carte for analytics, 3 levels of reporting, all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, I just want as many people using the software as possible at the company. And I want a piece of as much pie as I can get. And so since we could actually track returns and cancellations, we were able to show we actually created an incremental lift of X dollars. And if you turn us off, it will go away.
Right. So interesting. And that doesn't work for everyone. And I think a lot of times it's because depending on what your solution is, you don't have access to that data, right? So you don't know.
And I think that the thing is, like, I really think with pricing is just to break it down and literally put on a different hat. If I was on the brand side, what would I like? What would I not like? If I'm over on this side, what would I like? What would I not like? Until you can just really align it to just make sense that the more you use us, the more you pay, but you're not going to hate us. You're going to enjoy paying the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Budgets get demolished and 10 companies need to be cut. How do you make sure yours isn't one of them?
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Okay, so moving on to sales cycles. This is usually like the biggest headache for a retail tech company. How long have the sales cycles been? How are they now? How has that changed over time? And how have you managed that?
Yeah, so when we got on to a call with smaller brand and like startups, like I've done implementations on the demo Zoom. First call implemented by the end of the call, and I sent them a contract. But that's just not the case in general. It's 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Right now, we just signed a contract for September because that's when all of these initiatives are launching. Fiscal year is typically April. So understanding that cycle of February and January are not going to be awesome because literally there's a fiscal year change. I'm using an old budget. My job is to get into the new budget.
Right.
And then we have tech freezes for November, December, and January. And so you have a very short amount of time to implement your software. And so you have to stack your pipeline and get it layered as much as possible so that the deals just start dropping. But it's a painful process. And I just hired a head of sales, which I did way earlier than I expected. But I've been talking to brands and in conversations and nurturing those relationships through the build process to ask their opinion on something or new feature, how are their initiatives going? And so I was able to essentially build a pipeline that literally has more conversations happening that I can't handle. And we were getting budgeted because they've been kind of part of it. They knew we were here and what we were doing. And so we get the phone call. Hey, we're ready. We're looking. Let's go ahead and get this going up the ladder. And you have multiple stakeholders. And as much as you can say, I can implement in 10 minutes, will be great. The brand's on a completely different schedule. They don't do anything in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or in 3 to 6 months, evidently.
3 to 6 months is even like super tough. And a lot of times, just being really honest with yourself is the best advice I have. Is it's going to take longer, and just be really honest with yourself, knowing that you go after an e-commerce platform like replacement, that project's going to be late.
Yeah.
It's going to push you. They're working on a new ERP system. They're working on closing stores or whatever it is. Everything, every other technology company overpromise them.
Yeah.
And so just had it and know that it's going to take a couple more months longer, and you'll probably be in legal for 30 days.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point.
You have to have a really good relationship with your internal cheerleader at this company for you to get one meeting with somebody at that brand each week. And so if you need 7 meetings to close, you're not getting 2 meetings in a week.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you can get every Friday at 2.
Yeah.
Because they're also looking at other vendors potentially. And
Sure.
there's a lot of different stakeholders. So it's going to take a bit. And so just think of, if it's going to take me 6 months to sell, how can I reduce my implementation and integration time? You can control that. We got our integration time down to literally 10 minutes to integrate, because we had so much time while everybody was in sales cycle to just build.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually, because, and you just alluded to this, that you just hired a head of sales, which is, I'm sure, so exciting for you. How many years into this journey did you just hire a head of sales?
I incorporated in 2016 but I didn't even have a PowerPoint barely in 2016. I didn't even have a line of code until like mid 2018. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I was going to build. But I'd say from like February of 2020, from coming out of beta and saying, we're commercially available, go sell what we have, it works.
Yeah, so it's about 3 years.
About 3 years.
Yeah.
I'd say that would probably be the best judge. And I didn't expect to make this hire this early. I expected to take that role because that's where my experience is. But I'm also the head of product. And I'm doing all the wireframes. I'm building out all the scopes.
Not to mention your fundraising.
And I'm fundraising. And so it's one job that has you in the nitty gritty weeds until the wee hours of the morning. Nobody's designing wireframes during working hours when you have to do all of these other things. That's 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you have this going from like a pitch to customers and a pitch to fundraising, extraordinarily difficult to brain switch. It's a completely different audience, and it's a very difficult audience. It's not very transferable.
Yeah.
And that's really where I found some difficulty. And it's hard to fundraise in the space. And so I'm like, I need somebody 12 hours a day in sales that doesn't need me to be in the room, that I feel comfortable, and I'm not going to have an anxiety attack if she walks into Burberry by herself, that I can just be like, kill it, right? Go kill it. And know that I put the right person in the room. And if it closes or it doesn't close, it's not because I wasn't there.
Right.
And that, I didn't think I'd find that person. And personally, I wanted somebody from Jor. I just happened to have been introduced to somebody that used to work at Jor, and we just hit it off on the first call.
That's great. That's great. So you have now hired this kind of head of sales, which is great. I want to just ask, as we wrap this up, like, what other marketing or growth hacking kind of B2B strategies have worked for you, if any?
You can't sell B2B with Facebook ads or Instagram ads. Like, when you look at our decision makers in the industry, they're too busy for a lot of that stuff. And if they're on it, they're not on it at work. So I think LinkedIn is your best, and really find your voice. And I think that's the biggest thing, is at the end of the day, every technology company can pretty much build anything in 30 days. Tell me what you want. We can build anything. But the fact is, what's your perspective? What's your vision of the future? Why you? Why are you different? Why are you going through all of this pain to compete in this space? And by sharing that, I started having press reach out to me for me to make a comment on their article because I was so contrary to the traditional D2C narrative and acquisition costs, take care of what you have before you go get more. Like, I'm so much on the retention side.
Right.
And I just had a very different perspective. So they started reaching out to me for my opinions. And then I spoke on a couple podcasts, and now I'm co-hosting a podcast in the retail tech space and getting really comfortable sharing my opinion, because it wasn't always embraced when I was at the brand.
Amazing.
So I feel, find your voice. And I think that's going to be your biggest superpower, is you, because every company can build technology and a feature. It's really, if they're going to pick a vendor, they're probably going to use you for 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
These aren't, the life cycle for retail technology is, if you get in, you're in.
Yeah. I love that advice. I think that's such good advice. I think thought leadership in the space, in whatever form you do it, is so helpful to get your name out there. And that was a great piece of advice. And in fairness, you have given many great pieces of advice during this podcast. But I want to wrap up with my last question, which is maybe something we haven't covered already, or something you want to emphasize. Kind of, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give to founders as they're looking at B2B sales and starting from the beginning?
The most time-consuming piece of any sales job is building your database and your lead list and having quality data in there, because when you need it, you don't want to go look for it. And so hire somebody to help you with data entry, hire your sister, your niece, your mother, your father. Like, I had people all over my family with Salesforce license, sharing my Salesforce license, to just, I want you to go to the reel, and I want you to go to their brand list. I want you to add every single one of those brands in my database and go find out their corporate address. How many stores do they have? What's their online revenue?
Right.
And just really build the database so that you can start, once you get through some of those pilots, you know who you're supposed to be nurturing your relationships with. Who are you talking to on LinkedIn and making comments and sharing your opinions and asking for a spin class or coffee with, so that you can have your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and understand portfolios. Sometimes a lot of brands are owned by the same company. And so the more you can understand, if I can get in one company in a portfolio, then I can be a portfolio rollout.
Yeah.
And I think that's key too. So garbage in, garbage out, and just, it's so easy to just put the brand name and move on. But just, I started paying for Salesforce. Was my most expensive bill for most of the startup. Was paying for like an enterprise level Salesforce license, because I wanted custom fields.
Yeah.
So yeah. And my recommendation for anybody selling technology is to check out Sandler training and find the video tape, find the tapes, find a worksheet. If I have access to a lot of Sandler training, if anybody that's listening would really like to go through the program on the DL, it is amazing to help you sell air.
Amazing. I haven't heard of that. So that is great advice. Okay, those 2 pieces of advice are great. Respect your sales data, Sandler training. I love that. Casey, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing kind of your experience and kind of all this amazing advice for a category that honestly is so difficult. So thank you so much.
But it is so fun. And so, like, just stay at it. The goal is to survive.
Love it.
Survive.
Love it. Thank you, Casey.
Yeah.
And thank you all for listening to the Retail X podcast. We'll have another episode out shortly. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Retail X Series, check out www.retailxseries.com for more information, including recordings of past events. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Retail X Series. You could also learn more about me, find fundraising resources, or submit a pitch deck at www.redgiraffeadvisors.com. Thanks, and catch you next time.